fun. So when a big company decides to bet on blockchain, how do they really know if it's any good? How do they measure if it's fast enough or strong enough for the real world? Well, today we're diving into the tool that does just that, Hyperledger Caliper, the universal ruler for blockchain performance.
All right, let's set the scene. More and more companies are trying to take their blockchain ideas from these small, safe little experiments and turn them into massive production-ready systems. But when they do that, they run smack into a huge problem.
And that problem really boils down to this one single, incredibly important question. Can this technology actually handle the messy reality of a real business? Can it process thousands or even millions of transactions a day without just falling over? Look, this isn't just some technical hurdle, it's the #1 thing holding back wider adoption. Without a trustworthy way to measure performance, what you get is performance anxiety. And it's real. No company is going to risk millions on a system if they can't be sure it'll work when the pressure is on. It's a total deal breaker. And that's exactly where Hyperledger Caliper comes in. It was built from the ground up to solve this very problem, to be that standard, universal ruler in a world where every blockchain speaks a slightly different language.
So what is it, really? Okay, the official definition is it's an open-source benchmarking framework, and it's now part of the Linux Foundation's new Decentralized Trust group. But what that means is that it's one consistent toolkit designed to measure the performance of all sorts of different blockchains.
Its whole mission is built on these 4 key ideas. First, it's standardized, so you're always comparing apples to apples. Second, the tests are reproducible, meaning you get the same results if you run the same test again. Third, the data is objective, no spin, just the facts. And finally, and this is its real superpower, it's decoupled. The tool itself isn't locked into any one blockchain, which makes it incredibly versatile. Okay, so we know what it is, but how does this universal ruler actually work? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the architecture of this thing. Probably the easiest way to get your head around Caliper's design is to think about a construction site. You've got the foreman, who runs the show, and then you've got the crew doing all the heavy lifting. This is what's called the manager-worker model. The foreman is the manager process. It reads the whole test plan and then starts dishing out orders to the crew. Those are the worker processes. The workers are the ones actually hammering the blockchain with thousands of transactions. And this whole setup is great because it lets Caliper create a ton of traffic without getting bogged down itself. Now, here's the real secret sauce, the thing that makes Caliper universal. It's called the Adaptation Layer. Just think of it like a universal translator from Star Trek. It takes a generic instruction, like, hey, transfer this asset, and it translates that into the specific language that Hyperledger Fabric or some other blockchain can understand. This is what allows you to run the exact same benchmark on totally different platforms. It's brilliant. And every single test Caliper runs follows this super strict 5-stage process, no shortcuts. It starts up the network, gets it ready with things like users and channels, installs the smart contracts, then it runs the actual high-stress test. And when it's all done, it cleans everything up. This whole structured approach is what makes the results so clean, consistent, and reliable. Okay, so that's the theory, but how does this actually play out in the real world? Let's take a look at how Caliper is used to get some really eye-opening data. Caliper basically focuses on 3 main things. First is throughput, or transactions per second. That's all about capacity, how many things can get done at once. Then there's latency, that's about speed. How long does one single transaction take from beginning to end? And finally, resource utilization, that's the cost. How much computer power, memory, and network bandwidth does this whole thing chew up? And this right here shows you the kinds of trade-offs you have to make. In a land registry test, researchers used Caliper to see what happens when you need more people to digitally sign off on a transaction. Well, when only one person had to sign, they were getting over 63 transactions per second. Not bad. But when they required 3 different parties to sign off, the performance dropped all the way down to 37. So the lesson is crystal clear. More decentralized trust can have a real, measurable cost when it comes to performance. Caliper is also perfect for putting different platforms in the ring for a head-to-head comparison. In a bunch of different studies that pitted Hyperledger Fabric against a private Ethereum network, Fabric won pretty handily. And it's because Fabric was built from the start for these private enterprise scenarios. It doesn't have all the extra baggage like proof of work or complicated gas fees that can really weigh down an Ethereum-style network. But, the journey for Caliper hasn't been a simple, straight line. Right now, the project is at a pretty big crossroads. dealing with some major technical changes and some tough questions about its own future.
You can really see the story unfold in its recent releases. After adding a bunch of new features, version 0.7.0 was called the Great Refocus. The team made a big strategic decision to drop support for Ethereum, Bisu, and older versions of Fabric so they could really zero in on the platforms that enterprises are using the most today.
Now, this big pivot is happening while the project is under a microscope. Caliper is on probationary status at the Linux Foundation. What this means is that everyone agrees it's a valuable tool, but there are some real concerns about its long-term health, mostly around getting more people from different companies to help maintain it. If they can't fix that, it could get bumped down to the labs category, which is kind of like a home for more experimental, less official projects.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The Foundation's own Technical Advisory Council, the people in charge, they've said it loud and clear. For this project to survive for the long haul, it needs more people from more places pitching in.
So, with all that drama going on, why does this specific tool, this ruler, still matter so much? Well, because when you get right down to it, the future of trust really depends on our ability to actually measure it.
To really get Caliper's role, it helps to compare it to its sibling project Hyperledger Tape. Think of Tape as a simple sledgehammer. It's awesome if you just want to blast a network with a fire hose of transactions to see what happens. Caliper is different. It's more like a doctor's entire toolkit. It's not just about raw speed. It's a full-blown analysis framework designed for detailed, flexible tests with deep monitoring. And that really brings us back to the main point. We throw this phrase around all the time, decentralized trust. But trust can't just be a marketing buzzword. It has to be proven. It has to be backed by hard evidence. Caliper is the tool that gives us that objective, verifiable proof that these incredibly complex systems can actually do what we're promised they can do. So all of this leaves us with one final big question to chew on. The story of Caliper shows us that even the tools we use to measure trust need a strong community to keep them alive. Which makes you wonder, in this new decentralized world we're all trying to build, who's actually responsible for building and maintaining the tools that we all need to trust the systems in the first place?